Coalition Water Wednesday webcast for December 22nd, 2021.
Welcome, welcome, welcome to the People's Water Board Water Wednesday live stream. We meet every Wednesday at noon to talk about water struggles that are going on around Detroit, Michigan, and throughout the country and throughout the world. Super excited today to be having this conversation. I'm here with my co-host, Rosalind Walker.
Oh, hello. How you doing today?
Good. And my co-host, Nicole Hill.
Hello, community.
And we are joined with Peggy Case. Peggy Case, a lifelong water warrior and also the president for Michigan Citizens for Water Conservation. And she's going to be talking to us today about the struggle against Nestle here in Michigan. There's been a lawsuit filed. There's so much to talk about, so we're going to jump right into it. Thank you for being here, Peggy.
Well, hi. I want to start out by first of all clarifying a couple of things that there's some confusion about often. First of all, we're not fighting Nestle anymore.
Okay.
Because Nestle sold out. They sold out their North American bottle operations to two private equity firms that trade on Wall Street and that are looking to make a profit off of a company that was starting to have some problems and pretty much having problems because people all over the world were fighting against them. So they decided to drop their North American bottle operations. So we consider that a partial victory. However, the company that's taken it over as of last year has rebranded itself as Blue Triton brands, and they're operating all of Nestle's plants in North America now, using the same staffs and the same kind of operating procedures. But the original battle against Nestle began in the year 2000 when they arrived in Michigan. And the group formed in Mecosta to combat them when they realized what damage they were doing to the local streams and lakes.
They were emptying the aquifers, right?
Right, yeah. They were turning it into a bunch of mud flats. So the community kind of rose up against them. They had about 2,000 people that joined originally under the leadership of Terry Swear and under the legal work of Jim Olson. They spent 9 years and $1 million on a lawsuit and ended up with a partial victory that forced Nestle to cut their extraction in half and restore those streams to their original state and to introduce a fairly rigid monitoring process that required them to stop drawing down at certain times. Anyway, complicated legal battle ended in 2009 there was a settlement. And we kind of thought that was it. So we got involved in a lot of other issues, fracking and shutoffs and Flint water crisis and everything else you can think of that's going on around the state of Michigan. And then discovered that they were activating a permit that they had gotten way back in 2000 up in the town of Everett for a well there.
Nestle's permit, Nestle?
Nestle's permit. It was for 150 gallons per minute from the White Pine Springs well. And the people there started figuring out what was going on and decided to do something about it. But about that time, Nestle also increased their pumping to 250 gallons per minute with a permit from Eagle that there was no public comment on, nothing happened at all. So we, of course, got busy. We found out about this about 4 days before the comment period was over and started rallying people around the state. And good folks from Flint and from Detroit showed up at the public hearing in Big Rapids, made a big noise, which was very appreciated. About 600 of us were there.
Wow.
Protesting the permit because then they were trying for a permit for 400 gallons per minute. So when they went for that, people got even angrier. So, it was a rallying cry, and it was also the time when we began to really connect the dots between what was going on in Everett, it was Nestle, and what was going on in the rest of Michigan with the shutoffs and the the poisoned water and all of that, and the injustice of it all, of
Mhm.
allowing Nestle to withdraw that kind of water that belonged to the public for free,
Right.
while other people had no water whatsoever. So, so we began to pull those things together, and we ended up filing. They were granted the permit anyway after long periods of comment by Eagle. Eagle was functioning on Nestle's behalf throughout this entire operation, and so they got the permit. But we filed a contested case within Eagle. In other words, an administrative law judge was going to decide. So we filed a contested case. So that began in 2016, I believe, contesting that permit. And it took, about 4 years after all that, after numerous filings and, ins and, stuff that's so boring you can't stand it. But, in the court, Eagle went ahead and granted that permit anyway. So, and the judge, let it go. So we're forced then to go to appeals court, the Court of Appeals in Lansing. So we took the appeal to them. One of the things that the original permit that they granted required was a fairly rigid monitoring process. I mean, we had won that at least. So they were supposed to introduce quite a strong monitoring process. And we tried hard to get involved in that process to make sure that we would be able to participate in that.
Who was monitoring it? Eagle?
Yeah, no, Nestle had been monitoring it all along, but they did agree to let USGS. Well, the US,
So they
they
let
brought
the
the US.
snake be in their own hen house.
Yeah, that's all those years, for all those years. But on this permit, they agreed as part of the new monitoring process that they would allow the USGS to do the monitoring. And they did put in a couple of, dipsticks in the wrong places, but they put them in anyway. But we wanted to be involved in the monitoring process overall and be able to, make it so that we restored the ecosystem. We had trouble getting meetings with Eagle. We finally managed to get one meeting where we got to hear the same old tired, gray-haired white man make the same statements they've been making for 20 years on Nestle's behalf. And it never went any further than that. And finally, they ruled that no, it was okay. They were going to go ahead and grant that permit anyway. But we were going to, they had their guys going to produce the monitoring process. They were going to do it, and then they were going to present it to us and tell us what they were doing, which wasn't a good outcome. But
I was getting ready to
in the
say
meantime,
it wasn't good.
Yeah.
no. So in the meantime, Blue Triton came along and took over the operation, and we're allowed to use the same permit. They didn't have to apply for a new permit. They were allowed to use the same one, which we protested, but nothing happened with that. So, but then they pulled a really interesting little trick on us. They finally, in the this fall of this year, they told Eagle that in fact they weren't going to use that permit. After all, they were going to return it, the 400-gallon permit. They weren't going to continue to contest. And didn't want it to go to appeal court. They didn't want it to go to the court.
I had one quick question before we move on. Being that when Blue Triton came in, they were allowed to utilize the same permit that Nestle had. Were they bound by the same monitoring procedure as well?
Well, they ended up
supposed to be.
Yeah.
They were supposed to be.
They were supposed to be, but the monitoring process had not been developed yet. They were still not allowed to pump at 400 gallons because they hadn't finished developing a monitoring process. But yes, they were going to be allowed to use whatever process they came up with, but they haven't finished doing that. So we were taking it to the appeals court in the hopes that we would get other issues resolved at the same time as that permit, that related to this whole bottled water operation. Anyway, but they pulled a little trick by returning the permit to Eagle. And all they said was, we think under the 250 gallons, we're allowed to pump up to 288 without having to have a monitoring process.
Wow.
So they were asking to be re-registered. They said, they wanted to re-register that permit so that they could do 288 gallons per minute, and they wouldn't have to have a monitoring process. And so they were returning the old permit, and Eagle let them get away with that. You know, within a month they had granted that, of course. And then they said, since that permit has no longer existed, our contested case no longer existed. And so the appeals court case would be moot, and they wanted us to just drop it all and go home. And, you know, put our money away and continue
Not what we're
paying off
going to
the
do.
bills. No, that's what we said. Not what we're going to do. We are
No.
going to appeals court.
Mhm.
So that's where we are right now. Right now, we are waiting for appeals court hearing, which is February 22nd, I believe, something like that.
Mhm.
President's birthdays, you know.
What kinds of things can people do to get involved and really help fight that? I mean, you know, what kinds of things can people do?
Well, they can continue to publicize the ins and, you know, the back door kind of stuff, but we are asking them to start putting some pressure on Eagle to do something besides act like the same old tired Eagle that we had during the Snyder administration.
Protect the
because
people
they
and not the
changed-
corporation.
Yeah, they have
Exactly.
changed nothing. Same two guys who have, you know, facilitated Nestle for 20 years are still there doing the same kind of job. And we have tried to appeal to Dana Nestle to do something about this. And she says she wants to. She's on our side. She's hoping she can figure out a way to find something to do. She's hoping she can figure out a legal remedy. But she doesn't think there is one. She thinks she doesn't have a way to go about it given the existing state laws. And that what we need to do is change the
Wow.
laws and change the legislature. Well, we don't agree with her on that. We are arguing that, in fact, the laws are already on the books that allow them to deny that permit and to stop that operation and require rigid monitoring. It's already there. It's in the Constitution, and it's in the MEPA Act, the Environmental Protection Act. It's
Peggy,
right
why do you
there in writing.
Why do you think that she's
It's
not like she's going that
She
route?
she doesn't want to take it on right now. She's in the middle of course, all the Line 5 stuff, which has everybody's attention occupied mostly.
Yeah.
And then, you know, Benton Harbor comes along, and there's, you know, everything else. She doesn't think she can win it, so she doesn't want to take it on.
Okay.
And we think we can help her win it. You know, we can.
I was going to say that we can help her, you know, we all work together, you know, because you get what you ask for.
Yeah.
Well, I would
So
like to
you know,
send
we're
out.
still trying. We're still trying to get to her, and because she's, you know, she's doing a good job on a lot of other things, but not that one, not this one.
Yeah.
And
Nicole,
Eagle's
you were
hopeless.
I would
That's-
just like to send out to Dana Nestle a compassionate appeal to let her know that you have soldiers ready and willing to fight for this. We just need you to push forward on it. It's vitally important because the Great Lakes have 21% of the world's fresh water. This is important to not just Michigan, but to the world.
And when you're drying
The
up
whole issue.
is the way that Nestle's doing and the way that Blue Triton is doing, and those different corporations, you know, it never works out for the people when you give in to those corporations. It never ever works out.
And they draining us dry.
And she knows that. She knows that the whole thing about privatizing water is a bad idea, and it's a global bad idea, but it's also a global initiative that is got a lot of power behind it.
Ugh.
It really does. So,
Miss Peggy, I was wondering, with Blue Triton taking over, are they having the same bottled water products? Are they still selling water under Nestle's name? Or what are some of so they're still
Good question.
selling Nestle and Ice Mountain. Got it.
Ice Mountain and Pure Life. Pure Life is the other one.
Yeah.
And pure life.
Ice Mountain is the spring water. Pure Life is the groundwater.
That they're draining us dry.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. The stream beds are still dry. We visited them again this summer. Went and walked around out in the woods and looked at the headwaters of Chippewa Creek, where flows out of the spring, where there should be water flowing from the spring into the creek and feeding it. Bone dry. Still
Bone dry.
It's been
And
dry
what
for the
does that
last 4
spell
years.
for the people that live in those communities near those springs? Are they having water insecurity issues as well?
Yeah.
Some people's wells who have gone down. The city of Everett sells water to Blue Triton from their 2 wells that they actually sell water to Blue Triton. So, but the aquifer for the city of Everett is going down. It's gone down about 14 feet and has not recharged. People whose wells are near the area are they're having to dig deeper wells. They're having issues with the sediment in the water. It's not a good idea. And mud flats are forming all the way down Chippewa Creek. So, but the whole privatization thing is the key as far as we're concerned, and that does have to be stopped. And we do have to wage a campaign to get the laws changed. There are loopholes in the law that let them get away with this stuff. But there's also ways that you can get around those loopholes. You can pass through them if you know the right way to legally challenge it. And we just have to convince Nestle that she actually has a road through there that makes sense, and that there's enough people behind her to get it going. To make them.
Hey, how long does it take, or how long would it? Do you guys estimate that it'll take to fix those tributaries and those that have been drained dry? Do you think that they'll ever be that we can fix the environment?
Yeah, the one in Mecosta, the dead stream, which was a mud flat when we got involved, when we first formed and started challenging them, it had turned into mud flats. It was a stream that came out of a spring, and there was a little lake that was involved as well. And it took a few years of not pumping at that level to get them restored, but they are restored now. That stream is running like it's supposed to run, and
That's
the monitoring is
wonderful.
still going. The monitoring is still going on now. That monitoring runs out for that stream in about a year, I think. And it's monitoring that Nestle has had to pay for all along. And Blue Triton's busy trying to cut corners, cut costs whenever they can. Their job is to make money for this company and then flip it to somebody else. That's what they do. They did Pax Blue Ribbon. They did, what's the other company? There's a couple of other well-known companies that they
beer companies drain the water tributaries just as quickly, don't they? Yeah.
And that's really sad. They just draining all the wells and, taking the water from the community. And when you want to privatize water, I still have not understood that part yet.
Yeah, it makes no sense. And
yeah.
What's going on? We're in touch with the groups around the country, particularly awful in California, the San Bernardino Valley of California.
Oh my goodness!
Where
yes.
there has been drought for years, and they are draining that aquifer dry and being allowed to operate on expired permits in California. In Maine, six in Maine and Florida, Colorado, they're all operating, in ridiculous situations, and they have so far they have the legal options to do it.
It's just so criminal, morally wrong to do something like that to the earth and to people. It's just so criminal, but those corporations do not care. And most of the time they know that they do whatever they want with impunity, right?
Yes, definitely.
Because back to corporation, they have more money, and then that makes them have the power. And that makes the residents and the communities in these cities and these states and lack things. And when you lacking on these type of things, it's bad enough that they bottling up the water, but then we all have to buy bottled water.
Well, that was it for me.
Plastic.
Right. They were, you cause a water crisis, right? You cause a water crisis, and then you're the only saving grace for the water crisis, right?
Absolutely.
You're gonna
it's a win-win. It's a
right.
win-win.
For the power with the corporate, with the money again.
And then they force us to use little plastic toxic bottles to solve the crisis when it doesn't solve anything. It just prolongs it. Then we end up with a polluted ocean
and toxic bodies.
When you saw what happened in Flint, where there was just bottles of water everywhere, mountains and
Right.
mountains of them. It was,
Yeah.
the environment will never be the same because of that.
Right.
Well,
So then you
there
messing
was-
up the lakes with the bottled water, the rivers with the bottled water, the animals with the bottled water, just as much as the humans.
Well, and then they wouldn't declare it an emergency and to the extent that they would bring in FEMA and they bring in the bulk water for people to use. And they had to continue to use Nestle's little plastic bottles.
That was
And
another
that shocks me that they do that, because how deeply does a city have to be affected for FEMA to come in with the water buffaloes? I mean, Flint was systemically poisoned, then
Yeah.
forced to continue their poisoning by using these little bottles of toxic water,
Yeah.
and you still couldn't bring in water buffaloes to help these residents?
Now, I don't know what are they doing it different? I hope in Benton Harbor, I hope they're making
No.
an effort
They
to
have
get
no water buffaloes in Benton Harbor. No.
None. No water buffaloes.
Eagles sending them down
just
water,
criminal.
bottled water too.
You know,
Eagles
where there's a
sending them
town,
bottled
there's a
water.
town in Montana. There's a little town in Montana that years ago needed water. Their water was poisoned. They brought those things in right away. They didn't make them go through the stage of plastic water bottles. They just gave them water immediately. Totally different than the way they treat Flint and
Yeah, that's the part
It's
that
environmental
is so
racism.
criminal. It is. It is, because
is,
anytime they get that, and look, they're masterful at getting clean, affordable, or clean water to the military in different places. They run those water buffaloes everywhere. They get the military and those soldiers and the people fighting. They get them those water buffaloes. So for them not to have done that, certainly. And the worst part about Benton Harbor is they not only are they getting bottled water, but the community is expected to distribute it, which I think is just, so let me harm you. Let's let us harm you, and then you've got to figure out your own solution on how to get yourselves water. That was just the most bizarre thing to me.
The saddest.
Mhm.
yeah, institutional racism at its best.
Absolutely.
What
Anyway,
what do you
that's about all. We're in a holding pattern right now. Our organization is paying off the debt we have as much as we can. We still owe $55,000 on the contested case, which has now been declared moot by Eagle, but not by us.
Right.
So that's where we are.
what's next as far as the lawsuit is still ongoing, yes? Or it's over?
It's not a lawsuit. No, there's no lawsuit. It's a
There's not.
contested case.
Okay.
It's a contest. The permit is being contested. It's not their behavior that's being contested, it's the permit.
Okay.
So, it's different than Mecosta. Mecosta was the actual operation, and what it was doing to the environment was what was being contested.
Okay.
In this situation, it's this permit that was supposed to go to 400 and now is only at 288. So Eagle's saying that they did us a favor. They did the community a favor by not using the 400, that they think that, they were doing something wonderful. Well, in fact, they increased it by 38 gallons per minute from what it's been. So that's not a favor.
And it's not a favor if they're not monitored, if it's not being tightly monitored by somebody other than them.
Right, and they monitoring their own stuff, so they can say whatever they want to say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they actually, some of those idiots from Eagle went out and to visit the thing a couple of years ago. We invited them to come out and look, and it was amazing that they could actually walk along those dried stream beds and see nothing. They saw nothing.
I would like to see
Blinded.
Eagle actually understand the amount of water that is. I would like them to take an average household's water use for the month and physically show it, and then take those 38 gallons per minute and physically show it, just to see the huge discrepancy between those two amounts.
Yeah.
And then you tell us why these people only pay for a $200 a year permit, and this person may be paying $200 a month for
Injustice everywhere.
Yeah. No, we're going to keep fighting it. And it's 2022. We are protecting the water. We're going to make sure everybody has clean, portable water.
Absolutely.
We're going to keep fighting them because we can't let them win.
Right, and then they sucking up all our water, just draining up everything.
Thank you so
But,
much.
COVID was a hit for all of us. We know that. We
It was.
all took a hit from COVID. Our organization certainly did. But we're going to bounce back from it.
That's right.
Yeah, a lot of people took a lot of bad bouts from COVID, and then I think that I always say that the government put these things out here because we as organizers was organizing really well to the point where we were going to Washington, D.C., and we was going to be at the Capitol. They knew how to stop this, so they wanted to stop us from being to be together just as well as family when they don't want family together because they know if there's more of us, we can fight together. So they separated us.
They do a lot of things to intentionally separate us, but I'm not sure that COVID was one.
Yeah, out here to separate us, everybody.
But they certainly
we're going to bounce back.
I believe we'll bounce back. We were resilient people, Michiganders, poor people, vulnerable communities. We are all a group of fighters. We are a group of resilient people, and we will bounce back. And do not think because our numbers may be small that we still won't come for you, because we will.
That's right.
That's right.
Thank you so much, Peggy. That's actually a perfect way to move into our tribute. You were talking about warrior people. Thank you, Peggy, so much for coming and explaining to folks what's going on, asking people to share this out. People need to have an understanding about it, join the fight, do everything that you can to tell the story of what's happening so people understand it. And from here, I'm going to throw it over to Nicole. We have a very, very special tribute. Or Luke, are we going to play the video first? Yes. We've got a special video.
Absolutely.
How beautiful.
That was so beautiful.
Video from our very own People's Water Board Coalition Flowtown Review. As you can see from behind me, as well as in the video, the young lady that was sitting down has transitioned to join our ancestors and become one of them. She is a personal mentor of mine, and was part of the reason that I got into this work and taught me some of what I present to people today. And I wanted to just give a short tribute to her. She's affectionately known by us as Mama Lila. Lila Cabell. So I'll read this tribute. It's a tribute to Lila Cabell. Lila Cabell, or Mama Lila, as she was known by most, will always be special to the People's Water Board and personally to me. She was our official matriarch, mentor, advisor, and cohort against the wrongdoings in this water fight and this world. She was a mighty water warrior, a champion of civil and human rights, and a devoted mother to more than those she gave life to. There are many funny anecdotes and incidents that have endeared Mama Lila to those who were allowed to be graced with her presence, like her being seemingly asleep during our meetings, but then she would just awaken and have remembered everything that was said in the meeting. Dressing up as bandits for direct action or working tirelessly to awaken the youth to their history and the fight that continues. She never ceased to help in any way that she could. But do not neglect that she was a spitfire when needed if you were doing the wrong thing. She was a consummate professional and pushed others to be better, do better, and in all they did. And the void left in her absence can never be filled. So I love you, the community loves you, and the People's Water Board Coalition loves you, our dear Mama Lila.
That was really beautiful, Nicole.
Yes, it was beautiful. Our dear mother, Liza, Mama Liza. And
Well,
I keep her everywhere I go.
it's been a beautiful year, and we're looking forward to another year.
Yes,
And we'll
we
see
have
you next
more
year.
great shows in store for you next year.
See you
And
next year.
we're looking forward to you tuning in, getting more information, finding out how you can get better involved, and finding out where to come for the fight. And as always, to all of our viewers, all of our illustrious guests that have been on the show, to our tech guide, to my co-host, I say happy holidays and continue to stay afloat.
Thank you so much, Nicole, and happy holidays to you too, Peggy. And happy holiday to you too, everyone. Happy holidays.